All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Marlon Sanders. Marlon, man, this is an honor, man, because you never do stuff like this.
Yeah, this is my 1 or 2 interviews a year.
And, I think this is just awesome because, I mean, man, I first got into internet marketing back in 1999 after going to a Dan Kennedy seminar that he held in Arizona at the Embassy Suites on Camelback. And at that seminar, I met 2 people. I met Perry Marshall and I met Yannick Silver. And Yannick Silver had just come out with his instant sales letters and was kicking butt with that product.
That's going back.
And I thought to myself, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could somehow use the internet for my little cleaning and restoration business? And it turned out I could. And I started this butt ugly website called getmoldsolutions.com. And man, that led to so much other stuff. But you were one of the OG internet guys way back in the day that, and I reached out to you on Facebook recently and I was like, hey, Marlon, would you be open to do an interview? And then you and I got to talk a little bit and you're like, Kev, you don't know this, but I got this course from Michael Cage years ago and you were in it. And I'm like, holy cow, there's some memory.
Yeah, right.
And you know what really stood out to me about through all that, Marlon, is like, man, what a powerful testament to relationships, which is what this dang podcast is all about.
Interesting.
And so I would just like to start by turning it over to you so we can.
Well, I want to ask you a question, Kevin. Why did you pick relationships? I mean, like, you know so much about marketing. You've done so much. You did 600 sales presentations. You turned around the carpet cleaning business. You've helped thousands of people. When you go to do your podcast, you could have chosen any topic. Why are we talking today about relationships?
So, man, oh man, when I created my course, The Automatic Income System, I did over a 12-year period, almost 600 strategic partnerships for them.
Yep.
And through that process, I really came to understand the value of relationships. And without
those presentations were all built on your personal relationships, right?
They were, yes. And without even realizing it, Marlon, all those years spent running that publishing business and doing all those strategic partnerships, I was laying the groundwork and the foundation for the work I get to do today, which is I get to be this guy who facilitates relationships that impact millions of people's lives. And the natural and organic byproduct of that is millions of dollars in revenue gets created. That's what happens when you are valuable to other people. And so I have long believed that as entrepreneurs, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. And it was Brad Costanzo. I don't know if you know Brad or not, but a couple of years ago, Brad and I were talking, and he was the one doing a podcast, hosting a podcast, wasn't even on my radar, Marlon. But Brad and I were talking, and we went to lunch one day, and he's like, Kev, for a guy like you should seriously consider hosting a podcast because you place such a high value on relationships. You would absolutely love doing it just like I do. And of course, he's been running a podcast for years called Bacon Wrapped Business. And he said, and you won't mess it all up trying to figure out how to monetize it, but yet you totally will, and it'll just happen organically, just like it has for me. And he was totally right. Hosting this podcast, Marlon, has been hands down one of the most rewarding things I've done in my 28 years as an entrepreneur. And it has exponentially impacted everything that I was already doing and stuff.
Wow, that's really a fascinating story. I didn't know that backstory. I like that.
Yeah.
And I can see it. And you are kind of in this unique position of knowing so many people and having relationships with so many people that you can have on your podcast.
Yeah.
Well, like you said you did what? The Matt Basek interview this morning?
Yeah, I interviewed Matt this morning. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't usually do 2 interviews in one day. And I don't usually do 2 interviews with 2, internet OGs in one day either, So,
yeah, Matt and I go way back too. So,
so
the cool thing is, Kevin, and we were talking before, is I have the DVDs of when you spoke at one of Joe Polish's first events when he was doing the Better Your Best contest.
Yep.
And that's when I first really got introduced to him. I'm like, wow. I mean, this guy was a carpenter. I'm like, this guy really knows marketing. This guy's really, really sharp, right? And then I bought the Michael Cage Teleseminar Millions program, and you were the only person in the audience. Like, he sold it to one person, you. And then he recorded, and it was great. It was really awesome. And you went on to literally make millions from that.
We did. Well,
And
I'll tell you a quick story on that. I was actually at a Matt Fury seminar in Tampa, Florida, where Michael spoke on seminars, and he was doing a presentation with one of those overhead projectors and the clear 8x11 slides. And he kept getting animated, and he kept knocking his slides off and all over the floor and fun. But he was still, it was so riveting. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm sitting next to this guy, Chet, this friend of mine, Chet Rowland, who used to run a pest control.
I know Chet. I have his product. I bought it way back then.
Chet. And so Chet and I are sitting next to each other, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to the back table and see if he's going to be offering anything. And he's like, well, if he is, get an order form for me too. And so I do. I grab a couple order forms, and I go right to our table at the back. We're at the back of the room, and me and Chet, we're start filling this damn order form out. And Chet leans over to me. He's like, Kevin, he's like, what are we buying anyways? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really know what we're buying, but man, this shit just sounds good. But Michael was just so compelling, and I was just like, I can learn from this guy.
Wow.
And Michael and I became close friends. I hired him. In fact, he was a coach for me for probably 2 or 3 years. We were talking every single week.
Yeah, amazing guy. Amazing. Hey, I have a question. Have you interviewed Fury yet?
I have not.
Because I think Fury's like me. I don't think Fury, I may be wrong, but I don't think he does a lot of interviews.
I don't think he does
either. Because he's like I am. He's an email guy and a product creation guy, right? Yeah. He's not a do podcast interviews type guy.
Yeah.
But right. It's interesting because he had such a profound influence on a lot of people because of his storytelling.
Totally.
You know, in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. So I had a friend, I won't say his name, but my friend joined Matt Fury's mastermind. It was like, I forget, $10,000 or $20,000 or something.
Yep.
My friend at the time, he was in network marketing. That was a lot of money for him, right? So anyway, he goes to Matt's mastermind. All Matt does, the whole mastermind, is tell stories, right? And so this is the funniest thing, Kevin, and you'll probably relate and understand this because a lot of what you learned from Michael Cage was just storytelling.
Yeah.
Telling that amazing story of yours about when you're out on the dangerous vessels doing the fish stuff, right?
Yep.
And so he goes, well, I was in his mastermind and all he did was tell a bunch of stories. I didn't learn anything. And the ironic thing is he became a master storyteller and had paid for his home $250,000 from one 3-hour seminar, which was mostly stories.
Isn't that something?
And I'm like, well, all I got to say is, most of what you do now to sell is just telling stories, and your emails are all stories. It seems like to me it kind of paid off.
Yeah, right? Yeah, yes. And Matt too was totally brilliant at telling stories. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. And so the relationships is your topic, and it's an interesting thing. I have a couple stories about relationships.
Okay. Mhm.
So
Well,
in
so
nineteen
give everybody a little bit of background. Let them know, what are you doing these days, Marlon? What are you doing? Who are you serving? What inspires you most about the work? Let's just set some
I,
context.
I I serve mostly people who have jobs or are already part-time marketers. They want to be full-time.
Okay,
And I
okay,
create, package, sell, and deliver information products just like I've done since 1997.
okay,
Right?
all right,
That's who I am. That's what I do. Live streams every day over on the YouTube and Twitter and all of that. Right?
nice.
And I do a little. I have a little coaching thing, and that's just kind of my passion, and it it's what I do. And so in about 1994, 5 or 6, I don't remember well, sorry, 19, I'll make the story quick. 1978, I read this ad in a magazine that said, Ohio man discovers 7-step way to escape the great American rat race. And it has these little steps. I was struggling and I was in 70,000 in debt. And I just do these 4 steps, and we even do it from my RV vehicle. And once I learned these steps, all the money came in. I paid off our debt overnight. And I'm like, wow, this is just, I didn't even know what the rat race was. It's 1979 in college. But I'm like, wow, this thing's incredible. I'm ordering it. So I ordered the book. It was by Benjamin Suarez. And it came, and in the book, he had this whole big, long story about how Gary Halbert changed his life. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I could just meet this guy, Gary Halbert. He's like the greatest copywriter in the world who ever lived. If I could just meet this guy, my life would change, right? But that was 78. I never heard anything about Gary freaking Halbert again until 1981 or 82. I'm reading Entrepreneur Mag, 32-page ad, 32
Wow,
page ad
wow,
by Jay Abraham
yep,
for his
yep.
protege course. I instantly ordered it for $5,000, right? And eventually got it in the mail eventually. Right. You know, Jay, that's funny. And
That
so,
is funny.
and
That is funny.
and so anyway, but that course had such a huge, massive, impact on me, right? So I'm like, I started learning to write copy, and I got this job I ran this little ad in the Dallas Business Journal. And it's like, I could triple your direct mail results. I don't know. Jay said I could. So I'm like, I'm putting it in the ad. Right. And so I put it in the ad, and this guy responds, and I only had 3 responses. I'm all depressed because the ad costs $150. I spent $150 freaking dollars on this ad, and all I got is 3 responses. And so this guy responded, and he's like, well, why don't you come on down? And his name was Phil Kratzer, and he had a little company called National Response Corporation, which you probably remember, Kevin, because he would place your ad in all the classified ad things nationwide, right? And he spoke at Gary Halbert events and so forth, right? But Gary used to fly in weekly and meet with him. And so, and in that course that I ordered from Jay, there was a big thing in there from Gary Halbert. There were tapes from Gary Halbert, everything. I was like in hog heaven, right? And then this guy, I wrote for him for free for a week. Phil, I wrote a whole magazine for him, pretty much a catalog for him in 1 week because I'm a fast writer. I didn't say I was a good writer, I was a fast writer, right? My mentor, who was trained by Thomas Hall way back in the old days, a famous copywriter, he said I was the fastest copywriter he ever met. He didn't say I was the best. He just said I was fast, right? So anyway, Phil hired me because he's like, man, this guy can write copy at the speed of friggin' light, right? And so I wrote like a banshee there, and Phil spoke at a Gary Halbert event. And all I ever got to do is shake Gary Halbert's hand, but he did mention me at the end of one of his newsletters one time. He's like, and you won't find Marlon Sanders teaching this. It's like, this is my claim to fame in Gary Halbert. Is this anyway? The point is this: I'm at this company, National Response Corporation. I'm a copywriter. I'm in this little room, cubby holder, writing away. I met this guy on AOL, and I'm like, hey, dude, who taught you to write copy? Oh my God, you're really good. And it's like, there were only like 4 books on copywriting at the time, right? And he was like, well, John Caples. And I'm like, John Caples, that's where I learned copyright. Cause there's only like 2, 3, 4 books on it. Right. And so anyway, we became friends. His name was Jonathan Mizell, and he's writing his internet marketing newsletter. And I'm like, hey, I'm pretty sure our company can sell your product, your newsletter. Right. So I talked to Phil, and Phil's like, oh yeah, this just sounds great. This is great. This guy's great. Let's sell it. Because he was friends with Michael Enlow, and And if you knew Michael at the time was just massive. And so anyway, he was selling this thing. So the point is, number one, I got the relationship, Kevin, by doing what? By getting his product sold. This is one of the most important lessons you'll ever learn about relationships, in my opinion. So I got his product sold. And later, a company contacted him because he was writing a newsletter. He said, hey, we want to do these internet marketing seminars. And could you put together a team and come to San Francisco this weekend? And he's like, he calls me, hey, Sanders, this guy wants us to come and do a seminar in San Francisco. He's paying. He's going to pay us like, $3,000. You want to come? Yeah, dog, I'll be there. They're paying for airfare, right? Yeah, they're paying for airfare. I'll be there, right? And so I show up, and so we ended up doing 120 seminars around the world. And that led to an awful lot of things, but that never would have happened. Number one, if I hadn't complimented and said, hey, I really love your copywriting. How'd you learn to write copy?
Yeah.
Number two, if I hadn't got distribution, see, I made him money first.
Yep.
And this sounds like a little thing, but that's made me so much money because my philosophy about relationships, Kevin, has always been give first. And I'm going to tell you a book that you probably haven't read that would dovetail so flawlessly with what you're doing. And the book is named Network with the Affluent by Thomas Stanley. Now everybody knows Thomas Stanley for the Millionaire Next Door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's not the best book that he wrote by any stretch of the imagination. It just happens to be the most widely popular book. The best book, now it's not Marketing to the Affluent, it's Networking with the Affluent. They're two different books. The book is called Networking with the Affluent by Thomas Stanley. What he did was he interviewed and studied the top 5% of financial salespeople in the entire world. And he found out that they all used, virtually all of them in common, top 5% of salespeople use 7 methods. These are methods you never read about in any other sales book. There's methods you never heard anybody else talk about still to this day. They're methods that no one even to this day talks about, and yet it's the most brilliant book ever written about networking. I will say that. I will put that down as a guarantee. It is the greatest book ever written about network. It's just not the funnest book to read about networking because he documented in extreme detail, and I'll tell you a couple of the methods.
Okay.
High achievers. If you're going to be a top financial services salesperson, you're going to have to sell to rich people, right? Well, there's a little funny thing about rich people is a lot of them work really hard because it's in their DNA. They're achievers, they're builders, right? They're not after it for the money. They're after it because they love to build a business. They love to build. The hardest day in my dad's life was the day that he couldn't get up out of the chair and go do something. It's the hardest day of his life, right? That's how a builder is. But guess what? They accomplish a lot of stuff, but hardly anyone ever recognizes them for it. So these top achievers, you know what they would do? They would do it in various methods. They would give them some kind of award. Sometimes they would send them plaques in the mail for their accomplishments. And this wasn't one guy who did this, one gal who did this, one person who did this. This was across a large cross-section of the most successful financial services salespeople in the entire world. Recognition, giving them recognition.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. Recognition, because they don't get it.
That's right.
You would think they would get it, but now some of these people do, but a lot of them, they're just builders, and maybe they get a little bit of recognition in their industry. Maybe people just write with it, but they don't get it from outside. So you want to know how to contact really successful people and get a return phone call?
Heck yeah.
You go to the bookstore religiously, and you find the first day that a book hits the bookstore, a business book.
Okay.
Call them up. Or send them a FedEx letter. Hey, I just saw your bookstore in Dallas, Texas. Wow, this book's amazing. Well, I really loved it because of this, blah, blah, blah. You know what'll happen if you put your phone number on there? They'll call you up. Yeah, did you see, you got my book? It was on the bookstore shelf? Yeah, doc, it was on the bookstore shelf. This book is really fantastic too. I love it, right? Because I don't care who they are, but that book being on the bookshelf and somebody recognizing it. Now, if you're a copywriter like I was, and you want to meet someone worth $600 million who pays all their invoices, then what you do is, along with that letter, you send them half of a sales letter for one of their product or services that you love, and you just send them half the letter. You'll get a call back. Right, that's how I got Walter Itsy Bitsy Haley out in Hunt, Texas. He had an Olympic-sized swimming pool in his bedroom. He's worth $600 million. Famous people were there all day. Yeah, Marlon, Norman Brinker is the CEO of, or whatever he was, of Fridays, Bennigan's, and I forget the other big restaurant. Yeah, he is down here, Marlon. I took him down to show him where I shop, the Hunt Goodwill. True story. So that's only one of 7 methods in networking with the affluent. I won't bother to tell you what the other 7 are. One of them is they help them raise funds, though, for a cause. Walter would do that all the time.
Okay.
Another one is helping them with personal problems. I'll just give you an example. The reason Walter made his first $72 million for an insurance company that originally couldn't sell a policy for, his mentor told him to read Think and Grow Rich. He read Think and Grow Rich. He started a mastermind at 6 a.m. in the morning with 8 other salespeople. They would meet, they'd do Royal Canadian Air Force exercises. They would swap leads every morning. They'd listen to one side of it, Lead the Field tape by Earl Nightingale. Within 8 years, 7 of those people were millionaires. So Walter got an idea out of that group, and he met this guy whose daughter needed eye surgery.
Okay.
So Walter had a jet airplane at the time. He got her an appointment, flew her in to meet with the best eye surgeon in the U.S. He helped them with a personal problem. A lot of these rich people have kids that can't get into colleges. Okay. They don't know how to get them in. Walter would help them get their kids into colleges.
Okay.
A lot of them have kids that have drug problems. He would help get their kids into drug recovery programs. What I'm saying is that he would help them with their personal. He called it the I forget the name he called it. It was the whole person.
Okay.
And it would open more doors than you can fathom. Like he got in with, when he was doing, at the time I met him, he was teaching marketing to dentists. I wrote a letter that launched the Crown Council of Dentistry. That was 25 years ago. They brought me in 3 years ago to a meeting in San Antonio, Texas, in front of all like 5,000 dentists to recognize me for launching the Crown Council of Dentistry way back 25 years ago when the CEO was working for Walter at the time. Walter passed on since, and he took the company over. But the point of that is that Walter, everywhere he went, he would find networkers and help them. He got endorsed by the most famous dentist in the entire world. And the way he did it was because he got his wife to one of his seminars. In his seminars, he has people, if they need to stop smoking, they would throw their cigarettes in a trash can. They would write letters to anybody that they had a wrong with. If they needed to lose weight, they would get in front. And his wife comes back, and she won't stop talking about Walter Haley. She will not stop talking. So he endorsed her. He would never endorse anyone, right? Well, anyway, what I'm saying is that's 2 of the methods. Helping him raise funds for a cause. He would do that also. That's 3 of the methods. There's 7 methods in there. And they could open doors nobody else could open, Kevin.
Yeah.
They could have relationships nobody else had. Why? Because they gave first, but they didn't give in the way that people typically think about giving. They'd help them get publicity for their company, but more commonly a cause. What you'll find out is very, very, very successful people. My uncle's brother was chairman of the board over about 17 or 20 insurance companies. He worked his way up from selling insurance to people who dug ditches to the president of a company, and then over about 20 companies. And he had a jet airplane, and he would distribute Gideon Bibles all over the world. That was his cause.
Okay.
If you want to get an appointment with him, you call him and talk about the Gideons and about donating money. You have an appointment real freaking fast. Yeah. Most high achievers, very rich people, will have a cause they really believe in. Now, you may not have an avenue with other stuff, but if you're talking about that cause they believe in, you're going to have an open door real fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating, and nobody teaches it. Nobody does this, Kevin.
You're right.
So you asked about the stuff about relationships. This is what you're doing. This is stuff, but these people were salespeople. Like these people, they weren't just doing this out, and Walter was too. So anyway, he helped out the guy that owned the Piggly Wigglies nationwide. He helped that guy out. So that guy let Walter put an insurance salesperson in every single warehouse he had to sell insurance to the employees at a discount. That's how he made his first 72 million. He sold that company out to I think it was Kmart for 72 million, because he goes to Kmart and he says, "Hey, you've got this many employees nationwide. Worldwide. It was a mass amount of employees. Well, I have a system to sell insurance to all of them. You can buy my company. Do you want it? Here's how much money you'll make doing it."
Wow. Wow. Wow.
There you go.
Marlon, man, it's interesting. I'm going to go back and listen to the recording of this myself again, because I wanted to stay engaged. I did take down a couple notes, but I was so engaged in what you were sharing, and the thing of going to the bookstore and keeping an eye out for the new books to hit the bookstore shelves and contacting those authors. And
I met Sam Carpenter that way, worked the system.
Yeah. I mean, what?
Sent him a letter. Next thing I know, I'm on the phone with Sam. "Hey, Sam, loved your book. Worked the system. Man, just hit the bookstore." Because I go to the bookstore every day back then, because, unfortunately, you had more books hitting the bookstore back then than you do now.
Sure.
But it's, I don't know if it would work on Amazon, but there's something different. When their book, I don't care who they are. Yeah. I do not care who they are. When their book hits the bookstore, that's a big deal, because they had to work 2 or 3 years to get it there.
Yes. Yeah. That is a big deal. Getting on the bookstore shelves, and that's a big fat hairy deal. And so I think Jesse Elder, don't you? You know who Jesse is? I thought you did.
From way back.
Yeah. I met Jesse in 2012. Man, time flies. 12 years.
Dang, dog.
And that guy completely changed my life. And one of the things that he taught me is kind of like what you're saying. That, Kev, it does not matter who somebody is. It doesn't matter how successful they are. It doesn't matter how big of a business they run. It doesn't matter how great things look from the outside looking in. There is not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. And when you are just genuinely appreciative of people, it will move mountains. It will open doors for you. It will allow you. And he gave me on one of our very first meetings in January. Well, after I hired him, we met in like late 2012. And what's interesting, he sent me a Facebook message. Jesse was the first person to ever send me a message on Facebook Messenger. I had just recently got a smartphone and upgraded from my flip phone. And in fact, I was like, when the message came in, I'm like, what the heck is this? And I think I was on Facebook, but not very active. And Jesse had sent me this message, and he said, "Kevin, you don't know me, but," he's like, "I was at a seminar a couple of years ago in Tampa, Florida, that was put on by Matt Feary, and you spoke, and I was in the audience, and I heard you speak at Matt's event. And I just now recently heard you with Joe Polish and Dean Jackson on the I Love Marketing podcast. And I just want to tell you, man, you have come a long ways in a couple of years. And I just really appreciate who you are and how you show up. And I'd love to get to know you a little bit." And so we ended up making time to talk. And that was in 2012 in the fall. And when Jesse and I spoke, I said, Joe and Dean, they did 2 years that they did these I Love Marketing seminars.
Yeah.
Only 2 of them is all they ever did. And that year, the fall of I told Jesse, I said, "You know what? I said, I'm coming down to Phoenix next month to go to this seminar that Joe and Dean are doing, the I Love Marketing seminar. I'm going to go to that seminar." And Jesse's like, "You're going to that?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to that seminar, and then we'll just get to hang out and meet in person." And so we did. And one of my clients was there at that seminar. And on a break, we were talking. And when we get done talking and the client walks away, Jesse tells me they want more from you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, whatever level of service you're giving them now, they want more. And it was a husband and wife. And I was like, well, they're in my group coaching program, and they end up they invest $397 a month, and they're in my group program, and so it's a group delivery where I get on there twice a month, and I'm with everybody on there. And he's like, well, they want more. And I was like, well, what does that look like? And he's like, well, why don't he's like, let's break out of this seminar. We'll go sit in the hallway. And he's like, Kev, he's like, you're a strategic coach guy. You know Dan's stuff and the DOS method and all that. He's like, they invited you to take you to dinner tonight. He's like, go to dinner with them, and then just walk them through the DOS process and ask them those questions and figure out where they're at, and if it feels right, offer them to help them more. And I'm like, holy cow. And so I did. I just had that conversation with him at dinner. And I flat out told him, I said, you know what? I have never done anything like this before, but like, I really like you guys, and I would totally be open to it. And if this would be beneficial for you, in addition to the group coaching, I'll work with you one-on-one. And why don't we do this? Why don't we just go for a 6-month engagement and stuff? And we'll just try this out for both of us. And I'll meet with you guys one-on-one once a week for an hour. And we'll do that for 6 months, and I'll just continue helping you guys grow your business, and we'll do that. And they're like, well, what do you want for that? And I said, you know what? I said, we'll go with $12,000 for that. And they're like, done. And they wrote me a check right there on the spot. And I was like, holy cow. I was like, I called Jesse on the way back to the motel, and I'm like, Jesse, that was the most amazing experience ever. And I was like, and so I'm thinking to myself, I want to hang out with this Jesse guy some more. I want to learn some more from him. I want to, and so I did. And I'm like, I was like, man, I don't know what he wants or what he needs, but I was like, I told him, I said, I'd like to come meet with you and maybe spend some time with you. And I was like, man, if it's anything less than $12,000, or even if it is $12,000, I'm in. And I don't even remember what he wanted, but it was considerably less than 12,000. And I went and met with him, and that began a 3-year-long coaching relationship with him.
Interesting.
I worked with Jesse, and what the active appreciation, the intentional appreciation of other people was kind of at the core of that I've been doing that ever since. Just being genuinely appreciative, showing appreciation in person and in public on Facebook or whatever. I just wrote a post this morning talking about a guy, Eric. And I got all kinds of engagement for him. Right before we hopped on here, I saw that Robin Robbins jumped in there. Robin Robbins, I've known her for years, but she has never, ever commented or engaged on one of my posts. But she did on this one today. And I'm thinking,
great marketer.
Robin,
really cool,
brilliant.
Really cool.
About somebody who knows sponsorships. That girl knows sponsorships.
I know, she really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Well, TJ Row Leader. TJ.
Oh yeah, I know TJ.
So I talked to TJ on the phone once or twice. Really great guy, so giving, like really a generous guy, right? But I have it in my bedroom. He sent me a plaque this big to recognize my achievements in marketing, right? It's really cool. Nice. Really cool. I'll tell you something else, Kevin. I tell you about the flip side, right? Now, when I was younger, I spoke at 120 seminars and all the big internet marketing seminars. Somewhere along the way, though, my mom got Alzheimer's, and I was scared to go speak at a seminar because I didn't know if I'd need to fly in to Edmond, Oklahoma, because I lived in San Antonio, and Dallas, San Antonio at that time, where I need to fly in. And so I quit speaking, right? And then after that, my dad had cancers and other stuff, right? Stuff happens when your parents are elderly, right? So I stopped going to seminars, kind of like out of sight, out of mind. And I tell you, it's an interesting thing, Kevin. It's an interesting thing, and so when you're speaking at seminars, come Christmas, you're gonna have stuff show up from people you don't even freaking know, like just people. Like I go down. I had a sub shop I would go to. I go down and somebody just bought me subs for like a year. I didn't even know who it was. Somebody just bought me somebody paid my water bill for like 2 years.
Wow.
Somebody just, and stuff would just show up, right? Well, then when I got off the road and I didn't speak at the seminars, I still have, my email list and following and customers and all of that, right? But it's like that because you're not at something about being at seminars, right? Because you're not that visible person up there on stage, that doesn't happen. It reminds me of Arsenio Hall. So Arsenio Hall was on this TV talk show, reality show, not TV talk show, reality show. And they had to raise money for a cause, right? And he did horrible. He didn't raise very much money. And they're like, Arsenio, all you had to do was call up people and ask them to contribute. And he goes, well, it's the funniest thing. When I had my show, his platform, celebrity visibility, he's like, everybody had returned my calls. But I don't have my platform now. Right? He's like, nobody returns my calls. Right? And so I think that the recognition thing, TJ Rowley is really smart, because there's also a lot of people out there. Maybe they're not I don't know the word for it, the iconic person, right? But they have really successful businesses, a great following of customers, but they're not famous in that they don't speak at, they're not, especially speaking at seminars, books, or at really maybe high profile virtual summits. I don't know. I don't really speak at those, but they never get recognition.
Yeah.
Right? They never get recognition. And so, but it also speaks to, if you want to reach somebody who's accomplished, famous, accomplished, right? You got to do more than send them something at Christmas, or a gift, because they're like, I asked Walter once, I said, Walter, is there $600 million? I'm like, Walter, isn't it hard being so wealthy? Like, doesn't just everybody want something from you? And he says, no, Marlon, actually, it's the opposite. He's like, the more money I had, the more people just started giving me stuff. And he's like, on really rare occasions, somebody comes to me and asks for something. You know what I tell them to do? I tell them my story, and I tell them to go read Think and Grow Rich. And I tell them to come back and talk to me after they read Think and Grow Rich. He says, I've been doing that now for something like 40 years. He's like, not one person's ever come back to me.
Wow.
Right? He had a mastermind till the day he died. One person would fly in from out of state every week for it. Right? Masterminds are really powerful. I had the real genuine joy, and there's a tie into this of being in a mastermind for a year. Joe Vitale's in California. Now, he used to be out in Wimberley, Texas, and I'm in San Antonio, so it wasn't that far of a drive. So we would meet once a month in this mastermind with just some of his closest friends and some of his employees, right?
Okay.
And so I'll tell you another little thing here is Joe has a saying, and he says, don't show up empty-handed. And it comes to, there's actually a guy that teaches referrals in real estate, Brian Buffini. He says it comes from Ireland. There's this saying in Ireland that if you go to somebody's home, you don't show up with empty hands.
Yeah.
And he teaches people this to get referrals. It's like, you never show up with empty hands. You show up at a mastermind meeting with Joe. He's got an album he recorded. He's got a book. He's got something for everyone. You show up one-on-one with Joe for a meeting or something. He's got a book. He's got, right? You don't show up with empty hands.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a lesson there.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Heck of a lesson. I got a lot of books now from Joe. Had a couple singing albums. A lot of people don't know he had some really famous people work on his music.
Wow.
Yeah, really famous people. Joe's he lives what he teaches about law of prosperity and everything. But he also says that the law of attraction has the word action in it. Yes. And I don't know that I've met very few people that take as much action as Joe does. Yes. Like, people don't behind the scenes. I'm like, Man, that's a schedule you got. I mean, I take a few too many naps in the afternoon to be doing all of that. Wow. Right. Anyway, that's what I've got on the top of your
Well,
relationships, Kevin. I hope I gave you an
Marlon,
idea or two and your listeners.
that was absolutely amazing. So, for anybody that's listening to this going, dang, Kev, that was powerful. If anybody just wanted to reach out to you or find out more about what you're doing, I mean, is there any resources, any website they can check out or anything
Yeah,
like
so, so on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Marlon Sanders, I do live streams daily
that? Okay.
or almost daily. And then I have a 70-page report on how I sold 70,000 plus products online. It's at marlonsnews.com/70K.
Okay. All right.
And that's a redirect link. So no S. It's like http:// marlonsnews.com/70K. And
Okay.
it's about a 70-page report I wrote on how I sold 70,000 digital products online
Okay. So
without any advertising.
I'm going to make sure, and we include that with the notes from the interview here.
All right.
And Marlon, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today, to share from your heart. I mean, this was absolutely phenomenal.
Well, we should have swapped some more stories about your time with Joe. There's a lot of stories going on back there, Kevin.
For sure.
There's a lot of stories going on back there. And I think that your genesis is so fascinating, going from a struggling carpet cleaner, meeting Joe and discovering sales copy and marketing, and applying it brilliantly. So, like, I don't think people know how you marketed the mold stuff, but they should hear that presentation. That was really a killer freaking presentation of what you did, right? Like, you did mold audits, if I remember. Right? Yeah, mold audits, right? I mean, whoever thought of offering a mold audit, right? I mean, that's sheer.
You can thank Joe
brilliant
for that idea, you know?
That's really a cool idea. And then being able to be involved with Joe and other people, but you also attended, I don't know how long you attended the I Love Marketing events. Were there just 2 of those or were there more?
Yeah, they just did 2 of those, one each year for those 2 years. And then Joe, you know, so I went to a lot of his events when he was doing events for the cleaning industry, cleaning and restoration industry. And then in 2007, he launched Genius Network.
Yep.
And I ended up joining Genius Network in 2008 when I was just kind of up and coming. And
wow.
I was in that group for 12 years. I was in Genius Network and stuff. And
yeah. Now, what's next for you on this topic of relationships? Where does the podcast go? Where do you go with this topic of relationships over the next foreseeable, say, year?
So I'm going through a real period of personal growth, and I have been for a while now, and I have gotten much clearer on who I can serve best and who I'm most valuable to. And
interesting. That's a hard thing. That's not always easy.
Yeah, you're right. And and I've even tried doing it and being this connector and facilitator of relationships. I am completely useless to an entrepreneur who's not already my ideal person to help. My ideal partner is an entrepreneur who is already past. You know what? They're already past the place of needing to create cash flow for sustainability. They are they want to use their business to make their biggest impact in the world, and they value relationships in a big way. That's who I can serve best. That's who I am most valuable to.
Oh, interesting.
And so I just want to continue doing what I do. I want to continue just stepping into this role of being the conduit of trust for the people I serve in my life. And I firmly, I'll be 59 in July. And I know for
God, you don't look that old. You look about 40. My God.
I feel like I'm just now really starting to figure stuff out. And so that
I'm
Marlon,
not
once
quite, I'm
again,
not quite that young. My wife says I'm not as good as I once was, but once I'm as good as I ever was.
there you go. There you go.
That's actually what Walter used to tell Walter say. But okay, so that's interesting where you're going with this, and you've zeroed in on your audience and who you can benefit
Yeah.
and how you can help.
Yep.
And it's interesting. I love the background. I love your knowledge. Love what you've done. If they haven't seen or heard your teleseminar webinar that you did, that
Yeah.
you
You know what?
originally
I'm
formed with
sure I
Michael
could.
Cage, they need to hear it. It's a
I'm sure I could come
masterpiece.
up with a recording if
I'm
somebody.
just telling you, it's a
Yeah.
masterpiece. I
Yeah.
also think, just for the heck of it, you should see if you can get Fury on an interview. He doesn't do very many. That would be,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I know he'll have some stories to tell. By the
Oh,
way,
yes,
if you
he will.
subscribe to his CD of the month club, the whole
Yes.
CD would be one story.
Yes. Yes.
One story for an hour.
Yeah. It would be.
Like
It would be.
the master storyteller, the master. Like
Yeah.
he can tell a story like no one, right?
Yep. Well, we better bring this to a close. We could be
All
here
right,
forever,
Kevin. Thank you for
Marlon.
inviting me. I enjoyed
Thank
it. It was a
you.
lot of fun, really interesting stuff.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Marlon. Really
All righty.
appreciate you, man.